Before we begin, if you're into chilling mysteries, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give us a like, and drop a comment with your theory. It helps us out, and we love hearing your thoughts. It's another week, and we've got another true crime. It's another week, and we've got another true crime case that's going to stick with you long after the episode ends. As always, I've got something super cool for you, something that's been on my list for forever. Welcome back to Case Closed, everyone. I'm Grace, and today we're diving into one of the most notorious unsolved murders in American history, the murder of Elizabeth Short, better known as the Black Dahlia. Gary, I know you've been dying to cover this one.
Oh my God, Grace, you have no idea how pumped I am about this one. The Black Dahlia is the ultimate cold case that just never gets old. And it's absolutely fascinating because it's got everything. Mystery, Hollywood connections, and honestly, one of the most brutal crime scenes in American history. What happened to Elizabeth Short back in 1947 is still sending shockwaves through true crime communities today. It's been, over 70 years? And we're still talking about it because, well, nobody has ever been brought to justice for what happened to her. So Elizabeth Short, the woman who became known as the Black Dahlia, was born on July 29, 1924, in Boston, Massachusetts. She was just 22 years old when she was murdered. And the thing is, her life before that horrible end was actually pretty interesting in itself. She grew up during the Great Depression, right? And her father he abandoned the family when she was really young.
Wait, so she basically grew up without a dad? That must have been tough, especially during those times.
Exactly. It was incredibly tough. Her mom had to raise 5 daughters basically on her own, and Elizabeth was, the third child. And after her father left, they struggled financially, really struggled. The interesting thing about Elizabeth is that she wasn't actually living in Hollywood very long before her death. She had actually moved around quite a bit, back and forth between Massachusetts, Florida, and California.
So what brought her to California in the first place? Was she trying to be an actress like so many others?
That's what everyone assumes, right? But it's more complicated than that. She first went to California when she was about 19 to live with her father, who had, reappeared in her life. But they had a falling out, and she started just drifting around, taking odd jobs. She worked at the PX at Camp Cook, which is now Vandenberg Air Force Base. She definitely had aspirations in Hollywood, though she never actually appeared in any films.
Did she have the Black Dahlia nickname while she was alive? Or was that something that came after what happened?
Oh, that's a great question. The nickname actually came after her death. It was created by the press. They were referencing this film noir movie called The Blue Dahlia that had come out in 1946, just a year before her murder. And Elizabeth often wore, a black dress and sometimes a dahlia flower in her hair, at least according to some accounts. But she was never called that during her lifetime. The press they just loved creating these sensational nicknames, It made the story more sellable.
So what exactly happened when they found her? I know it was in 1947, but what were the circumstances?
Oh, it was absolutely horrific. On January 15th, 1947, a local resident named Betty Berzinger was walking with her 3-year-old daughter through a vacant lot in the Leimert Park neighborhood of Los Angeles. And what she saw, at first she thought it was, a broken mannequin, right? But it was Elizabeth's body.
Oh my God, with her child there? That's terrible.
Yeah, can you imagine? Absolutely traumatizing. The thing is, the body wasn't just murdered. It was completely bisected at the waist. The two halves were, positioned about a foot apart, and her arms were raised above her head at these really unnatural angles. And the most disturbing part was that the body had been completely drained of blood and washed clean.
Wait, completely drained of blood? How is that even possible?
The killer must have done it somewhere else, at a different location. The medical examiners determined that Elizabeth had been killed elsewhere and then transported to that vacant lot. The body showed signs of extensive torture that had likely occurred over several hours before her death. Her face was slashed from the corners of her mouth toward her ears, creating this grotesque smile effect called a Glasgow smile.
That's just, I don't even know what to say. Was there anything else at the crime scene? Any evidence left behind?
Surprisingly little. which is part of why this case has remained unsolved for so long. There were no signs of a struggle at the location, confirming she was killed elsewhere. No blood, no murder weapon, nothing under her fingernails. The body was just positioned there, almost like a display. The police did note that the body arrangement seemed deliberate, almost theatrical.
How long had she been dead when they found her?
The coroner estimated she'd been dead for about 10 hours when Betty Bersinger discovered the body. But the actual murder likely happened the day before, on January 14th. And another disturbing detail is that the precision of the cuts suggested the killer might have had, surgical knowledge, or at least some anatomical training. The body was cut so cleanly that some investigators believed it must have been done by someone with medical expertise.
So, with such a horrific crime scene, why did this case go cold? I mean, there must have been tons of evidence, right?
Well, that's the thing. This case was basically doomed from the start. First off, the LAPD made some really critical mistakes in the initial investigation. The crime scene was, completely compromised because they allowed so many officers and even reporters to just walk all over it, Evidence was contaminated before it could even be properly documented.
Oh, that sounds like such a rookie mistake. Was this normal for that time period?
Unfortunately, yeah. Forensic science wasn't nearly as advanced in 1947 as it is today. And the media coverage, oh my God, it was absolutely insane. The case got nicknamed the Black Dahlia by the press, and it just exploded. The Los Angeles Examiner was actually, they were calling the victim's mother pretending to have information about a contest Elizabeth had won, just to get her reaction when they told her about the murder instead.
Wait, they did what? That's absolutely disgusting.
Totally disgusting. The media sensationalism was just off the charts. Newspapers were printing all kinds of lurid details, some true, some completely made up, and this created this fog of information and misinformation that made it nearly impossible for investigators to separate fact from fiction.
So beyond the contaminated crime scene and media circus, what other challenges did investigators face?
The biggest problem was probably the sheer volume of false confessions. The case became so famous that over 500 people came forward claiming to be the killer. Each one had to be investigated, which drained resources and pulled detectives away from following more promising leads.
Hundreds of false confessions? That's insane.
Absolutely. And there was also internal pressure, The LAPD was under tremendous public scrutiny to solve this high-profile case quickly. This kind of created this environment where they'd focus on suspects they could build a case against rather than following the evidence where it actually led. Plus, some evidence and files have allegedly gone missing over the years, which has fueled conspiracy theories about police corruption or cover-ups.
Do you think we'll ever know who really killed Elizabeth Short?
Honestly, I think it's unlikely at this point. Most of the original suspects and investigators are dead now. Any physical evidence has degraded or been lost. The case is it's over 75 years old now. But it remains, the ultimate cold case that continues to haunt Los Angeles to this day.
So with all these complications, who were the main suspects? Did they ever have any strong leads?
Oh yeah, there were. There were definitely some compelling suspects over the years. The most famous one was probably Dr. George Hodell, a Los Angeles physician. His own son, Steve Hodell, who was actually an LAPD detective himself, became convinced that his father was the killer and wrote this whole book about it called Black Dahlia Avenger.
Wow, his own son. What evidence did he have?
So the thing is, Steve found these photographs in his father's belongings that he believed showed Elizabeth Short, though this has been disputed. But beyond that, George Hodell had medical knowledge that matched the precise nature of Elizabeth's wounds. He was also questioned in the original investigation and, get this, his home was actually bugged by the police at one point. During the surveillance, they recorded him saying something like, "Supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia, they couldn't prove it now."
That sounds pretty damning. Why wasn't he arrested?
Well, that's where it gets complicated. The recording was, really muffled and could have been interpreted different ways. Plus, George Hodell left the country soon after and moved to the Philippines. Some investigators think the LAPD might have had evidence against prominent figures like Hodell, but, faced pressure to bury it because of his connections in the community.
Who else was on the suspect list?
There was Walter Bailey, a surgeon who lived near the vacant lot where Elizabeth's body was found. He definitely had the medical knowledge to perform those precise cuts, and his daughter was apparently acquainted with Elizabeth's sister. But the evidence was, it was circumstantial at best.
Any other theories that stand out?
Oh, for sure. Some people think it might have been Jack Anderson Wilson, also known as Arnold Smith. Detective John St. John was about to interview him when he, conveniently died in a hotel fire. There's also the Woody Guthrie theory. Yes, the folk singer. Though that one's pretty far-fetched.
Were there any connections to Hollywood or the mob? It seems like that would be, I don't know, fitting for LA at that time.
Absolutely. Some theories suggest Elizabeth might have had knowledge of Hollywood secrets or was involved in some underground film industry stuff. There's speculation she kept a little black book of powerful men she'd met. And yeah, mob connections have been suggested too, especially since the killer clearly took time with the body, which suggests they weren't worried about getting caught.
It sounds like there are too many possibilities and not enough concrete evidence for any of them.
That's exactly right. And that's why this case remains unsolved. Too many suspects, too little evidence, and too much time has passed. But it continues to fascinate people because, well, the mystery is just so compelling, you know?
So one thing I've always wondered about the Black Dahlia case is why it, out of all the unsolved murders in history, became such a cultural phenomenon. Like, it's been in so many movies and books, right?
Oh my God, yes. It's absolutely everywhere in popular culture. The case has inspired, like, dozens of books, films, TV shows, you name it. James Ellroy's novel, The Black Dahlia, is probably the most famous, which was later made into that film by Brian De Palma. And the case has shown up in everything from American Horror Story to True Detective references.
What is it about this particular case that captured everyone's imagination so strongly?
I think it's this perfect storm of different elements that make it so captivating. First, you've got the Hollywood connection. Elizabeth Short was this beautiful young woman who came to LA with dreams of stardom, which is like such a classic American narrative. Then there's the absolutely shocking brutality of the crime itself. And finally, the fact that it remains unsolved creates this eternal mystery that people can't stop trying to solve.
That makes sense. Do you think the nickname played a part too? The Black Dahlia sounds like something straight out of a noir film.
Absolutely. The nickname is it's perfect for this case. It's mysterious, it's elegant but dark, and it immediately creates this visual in your mind. The media really ran with it at the time, and I think that's part of why it's stuck in the public consciousness. Compare that to other unsolved cases from the same era that just don't have that same hook, you know?
And I guess the timing matters too. Post-war America was changing so much.
100%. It happened right after World War II, when America was supposed to be entering this, like, perfect peaceful era. The brutality of the crime shattered some illusions about safety, especially in a place like Los Angeles that was projecting this image of glamour and dreams. The case kind of represents the dark underbelly beneath the shiny surface of American post-war optimism.
Do you think our fascination with it says something about us as a society?
I mean, yeah, I think it speaks to our collective fascination with the macabre, with unsolved mysteries, and with, true crime in general. There's something about not knowing, about the possibility of resolution, that keeps people coming back to this case decade after decade. It's like we can't let it go until we know what really happened to Elizabeth Short.
Well, I think we've covered pretty much all the angles on this horrifying case. The Black Dahlia murder remains one of the most disturbing and fascinating unsolved crimes in American history.
Definitely. Elizabeth Short's tragic story, from her arrival in LA with those Hollywood dreams to her terrible end, has captured imaginations for decades. And it's wild to think that after all this time, 75 years later, we still don't know who killed her or why.
What stands out to me most is how the case was essentially doomed from the start, with all those investigation problems and the media circus.
Right, exactly. Between the contaminated crime scene, the false confessions, and the, sensationalized reporting, the police were fighting an uphill battle from day one. And now it's just frozen in time, This perfect, terrible mystery.
So what's on deck for next week's Case Closed?
Oh, I'm really excited about this one. we're going to be diving into one of the worst mass murders you've never heard of, the Batavia shipwreck. At least 150 people were murdered off a tiny, remote group of islands off Western Australia back in the days of sailing ships.
That sounds absolutely fascinating. Can't wait to hear all about it.
It's going to be a good one, trust me. Lots of twists and turns in that case.
Well, that's all for this week, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in to Case Closed. If you enjoyed the episode, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
And we'll see you next week for another true crime mystery that'll keep you up at night. Take care, everyone.